This episode contains discussion of murder, suicide, and drug addiction. Listener discretion is advised.
Sandy Maloney was expected in court in February of 1998 for her final hearing in her divorce from her husband, John Maloney. She had spoken with her mother several times the night before, and after being concerned for her daughter, Lola promised that she would make the just over 2-hour drive from Madison, Wisconsin to Green Bay, Wisconsin the next morning to check on her. When Lola arrived, she found her daughter's body burned, not only on the sofa, but into it. After months of investigating her husband, a local police officer was accused and convicted of her murder. However, he has always maintained his innocence, and it's entirely possible that he is not responsible for Sandy's death.
Okay, you guys, we've got a real... I wouldn't call it a whodunit, but there's some parts where the math ain't mathin'.
It's a real diddy do it.
That's the one. Yep, yeah. And as always, we have a couple thank yous here. We want to give a hey girl thanks to, and of course I can't see it where I am, Catherine L. Kurowski for requesting it.
Yes, thank you. And thank you to Beth for writing it up.
Thanks, guys. All right, so should we just launch right into it?
I think we should.
All right. So Sandra Maloney, who went by Sandy, was born on July 30th, 1957 to Ramona. She went by Lola Beal and Laverne Cater in Madison, Wisconsin. Did I say that right?
I have no idea.
Wisconsiners.
Wisconsin.
Sandy had two brothers, Bill and Brad, and a sister named Wendy. Sandy eventually moved to Green Bay, Wisconsin, where she graduated from Preble High School in 1976. Sure. She married her high school sweetheart, John Maloney, in 1978 at St. Bernard's Catholic Church. The couple had 3 sons, Matt, Sean, and Aaron, and Sandy was described as warm, caring, compassionate, and a loving mother. She loved her children and her family. She enjoyed volunteering at the school that her children attended. And according to John, the first 7 years of their marriage were bliss. Now, we don't have, obviously, unfortunately, Sandy's account of the marriage here. John says that Sandy was working as a secretary. John was trying to finish up his criminal justice degree, and then he eventually joined the police force. According to a 2005 CBS News article by Rebecca Lung, the couple's eldest son, Matt, said that the family started to crumble in the early 1990s. So, Sandy at this time had developed a neck pain, and she was having a lot of trouble getting it treated. What I read from some different articles and some other things were her neck was causing a lot of pain for her. And for whatever reason, doctors couldn't figure out exactly what it was. She was trying chiropractic care. That didn't seem to be helping. It might have been making it worse. All these things. So she's having trouble getting a diagnosis. She doesn't know exactly what's causing it. But in the meantime, she's still in incredible pain. And this is something we just talked about in our doc jam, Take Care of Maya. Sometimes it seems like patients who suffer from chronic pain a lot of times are, I'm not going to say all the time, there's great doctors out there, but have a higher likelihood of not being believed, especially if you don't know exactly what it is that's causing it. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that that was the case with Sandy. She was given some different prescriptions to try to deal with the pain, but it didn't seem to be helping. And so then she just started to develop tolerance. I don't know, but she ended up with an addiction to prescription painkillers. And not only that, she started drinking really heavily too. And you have to have so much compassion for that because she's just trying to stop the pain initially.
Right.
And then what those substances do to your brain, now she becomes dependent on them and all the things. So that's when things started to go really downhill, according to John and the boys. The boys saw it, and also Sandy's friends saw it. She just became a person that they did not know anymore, which is unfortunate and it's sad. So Matt said if she couldn't get the pills from her doctors, her friends would provide it for her. They were no help to her. And I think initially, maybe with these friends, they were like, she's in a lot of pain, I want to help her. I don't think they realized how detrimental that was to her. I think initially they were just trying to be of help. And I don't know what caused those friendships to crumble, but over time, she became very, very isolated. And the addiction was so bad that if her sons needed a prescription, the local pharmacist would make them take the pill in front of him to ensure that Sandy would not take it. And from what I understand, I mean, they're not giving kids Percocets. Like, it was a situation that was so bad that Sandy would just take whatever she could from people that knew her. That's what they say. So it wouldn't have necessarily even been a medication that, like, it would have been a pain pill. It's just whatever they got, she wanted to take it. And Matt said that didn't work. So the pharmacist would say, here's your prescription. You need to take it right now. I want to see you take it because you need this. I want to make sure you get it. And so he said that before they'd even go in, because now Sandy knows this is going to happen, she would tell him, put the pill under your tongue, and when we get out, I'll take it. And that's what they would do. You know, and these are kids and they're listening to their mom. I mean, it's just, it's really sad, the whole thing.
So sad. Over
time, Sandy also developed depression, panic disorder. Again, she was abusing alcohol as well. Matt said they would find vodka bottles hidden around the house that would prompt fights between his mom and dad. They'd be screaming, they'd be yelling, they'd be slamming doors. These were pretty, I mean, it's got to be so scary for these children.
Right.
And they, you know, they don't understand. Like, it's really sad. Now, John says he never physically abused Sandy during these fights, but there are records that Sandy complained about his violence toward her to her psychiatrist. And the psychiatrist said, I have seen the bruises. I know that there are bruises. Sandy's sons, though, said that their mom would do anything to get more drugs. So they also said, not only would she, and I don't know if what they mean by that is that she would hit herself on something to then be able to go to the doctor and be like, look, I have an injury, I need more medicine. That's kind of what that seems like he's trying to say there.
Right.
But he also said she was drunk all the time. I mean, she'd be drunk by the time they got home from school every day. So, and that's 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon kind of thing. So she'd fall. She fell all the time, they said. She would get bruises all the time from just stumbling into stuff.
Well, and one of the sons, too, said that he never saw John be violent towards Sandy, but Sandy was violent towards John, so.
That's true. Yeah, he did say that that he never saw his dad hit his mom, but sometimes when they would fight that Sandy would hit him. And aggression is something that can absolutely happen with drugs and alcohol. It can make you more irritable. It can make you, you know, you and I have been in massive fights when we would go out drinking.
Remember a specific situation where I got a phone thrown right into my chest.
Yeah, but I was so drunk that I thought I got the phone thrown into my chest. And I called Andrew and I was like, and he was like, well, I don't know what you're saying. And then I think I threw all your shit in my car out in the road, maybe. I don't know. It was
totally did, yes.
Maybe the driveway. Maybe I didn't make it all the way the road. So, and then the next morning I'm like, I don't know.
What a wild night.
what were we mad about? Like it just happened, right? So like, I think everybody's been in that situation where like,
100%.
You know, if you've ever, you know, drank alcohol, you're just like, whoops, had a little too much, got pissed about something. Actually, don't even remember what it was. Like, you know, but they were getting in fights all the time. John would get upset that she was drinking and then that would start a fight. And like, and you have their children saying, I did see this. I saw her get really aggressive with him. I saw her hit him. I never did see him hit her. And police had been called to the Maloney residence on several occasions, but their charges were never filed. You could say, well, John's a police officer, so they're not going to file anything against him. Or you could say they didn't find anything, you know, there was nothing to substantiate. I don't know. But for John, the final straw was in 1997. So Sandy was driving the family van. She was highly intoxicated. She slammed into a parked car. This is literally sounds like the scene from, is it 40-Year-Old Virgin? Where I don't remember her real name.
I can't remember her real name
she's
either.
Like, let's get some fucking French toast or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's like that. I mean, she was
Leslie
driving.
Mann?
Yes, Leslie Mann. She's driving She's super, super intoxicated. She slams into a car, and it was pretty significant. And John was like, okay, that's it. The kids could have been in that car. He was out of town at the time. So she could have been driving the kids to or from school or, something like that. And it was so bad. Her just situation was so bad and out of control that these kids knew as children to watch your mom's behavior. And if it looks like it's bad, don't get in the car with her. Like, that's a lot that's a lot for kids to go through. It's really sad. So when that happened, he was like, that's it. I can't do this anymore. They had tried to get her to stop drinking. Some family members had been involved in these things to try to get help for her addictions. Unfortunately, it didn't work. So he kind of, I think, just threw his hands up and was like, I don't know what else to do, but I can't keep my kids in this situation. So he filed for divorce. He moved out. And then he got full custody of all 3 boys. After he did this, he filed for divorce. He moved out. He meets a 28-year-old IRS agent. This is Tracy Hellenbrand. And then they started dating.
On February 10th, 1998, Sandy spoke with her mom, Lola, on the phone 3 separate times, and the last call was in the evening and ended at about 6 p.m. During this call, Lola offered to drive to Green Bay, Wisconsin, the next day to check on her. And like we said earlier, it's about 2 hours and 15 minutes from Madison, Wisconsin to Green Bay, Wisconsin. So Lola likely hit the road fairly early as Sandy and John had their final custody hearing that morning.
Lola was so concerned about her that she was going to drive that far the next morning. And that I don't know. I just feel like that's a part of the puzzle, right? Like she
100%,
she was so worried about her. And if you watch what is that show called? It's Aphrodite Jones. What was it?
Yeah. True Crime with Aphrodite Jones?
Yeah, that might be it. She has an episode on this. When they are reenacting this phone call between Lola and Sandy, the actress playing Sandy is slurring her words. She's not making a lot of sense. And so, Lola is offering, let me come check on you. She also knew that Sandy was really, really worried about this hearing. She did not want to go to this hearing. It wasn't going to go well for her.
Right.
None of the divorce stuff had gone well for her. I mean, so I just think that is important. It adds context that she was so worried about her that she was going to get up early that morning to make it to Sandy's house to check on her before the hearing.
Definitely. So when Lola arrived at Sandy's house on the morning of February 11th, she found the side door was locked. And this was unusual because Sandy usually kept that door unlocked. But Lola goes to the front door and found it was like a storm door, glass door. The latch was broken and she had tied, it looked like a little plastic tie that she would keep it latched to. And that was shut. And that was normal. So Lola goes inside. As she made her way inside the house, everything seemed off and she didn't see Sandy. So she goes upstairs, she's calling Sandy's name, she doesn't get a response, she goes back downstairs, and she finally found Sandy. Sandy was lying face down on the couch and her body was completely burned. Lola ran outside to her car where she called 911, and within minutes, police and firefighters were on the scene. And while all this is happening, John Maloney is at the hearing. And then he goes home in the hopes of finding out why Sandy did not show up. It does not take long for John to find out, though. Police go over to John's house to break the news of Sandy's death. And the officers that showed up were his colleagues, and when they told him what had happened, John broke down. While the officers were with John, his girlfriend Tracy, she shows up, and he told her what happened, and as far as we know, Tracy was very, very supportive. She was there for him while he was very upset.
These police officers, you know how so many times you'll hear that, like, oh, well, when we told him she was dead, he had no reaction. It didn't seem real or it was too much of a reaction. It seemed put on. Like, these police officers felt that he responded appropriately, and they thought that Tracy comforting him was also appropriate and seemed genuine. Like, genuinely seemed like they did not know that she was dead.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you can take that for what it's worth, but initially that's what they thought.
John was described as a typical cop wanting to put the bad guys away, and he was known for getting angry and aggressive with the quote-unquote bad guys, but he was also described as being a devoted father. He was also chosen for specialized training in the spring prior to Sandy's death as an arson investigator. So back at Sandy's house, investigators found that the couch in the living room was destroyed by the fire, with one side being more burned than the other. Sandy's entire back was burned, and her head and torso were found on the less burned side of the couch. She was also not wearing a shirt. And as investigators looked through the home, they found cigarette butts, matches, and empty vodka bottles in and around the couch. At this point, police suggest that Sandy's death was an accident and that she had fallen asleep with a lit cigarette in her mouth. Dr. Gregory Schmunk was the chief medical examiner for Brown County at the time and said that this was one of the most problematic cases that he's ever been involved with. When it was time for the autopsy, Dr. Schmunk was out of town, so Dr. John Tegetts, from Milwaukee County, stepped in. And during the autopsy, beneath the layers of her burned body, a small amount of soot was found in Sandy's lungs, but the carbon dioxide level was only at 8%, which meant that her cause of death was not the fire. As he continued with the autopsy, Dr. Tegetts found a large gash at the top, or on the top of Sandy's head, as well as marks on her neck that indicated strangulation. Because of this, her death was ruled as being caused by probable, quote-unquote, probable strangulation. So this doesn't automatically mean that her cause of death was murder. Probable cause is not 100%.
Yeah. I have here, too, a little bit more detail about this autopsy. So, like they said, the carbon dioxide level was only at 8%. So they did not believe that smoke inhalation
was the
caused her death. They did find those marks that appeared to present as strangulation. And, she had that
gash on her head.
Her blood alcohol level at the time of her death was 0.25%. And we'll link to this report too. This is Dr. Dibdins. I do that every time. A forensic pathologist. So her blood alcohol level was 0.25% at the time of her death. That is not lethal. The prosecution is going to harp on that that's not lethal. But her vitreous alcohol level was 0.40%. That is gonna, it all kind of plays a part. The medical examiner also did not have any, at the time of this report, had no information about Sandy's history. Excuse me. He did not know that she was a really, really heavy drinker. He did not know that she had a habit of lighting cigarettes and then putting them all over the house, falling asleep. He did not know that she had a habit of, her son said that she had a habit of like taking tissues,
Kleenexes and stuff, and twisting them up to get the sleep out of the corner of your eye or something. Yeah,
like the goopy crap out of her eyes and stuff like that. So like all of these things they did not have, and she was found face down. So these are just all things that are going to come into play as we continue.
Well, and one of the things too that I found to be really interesting that they brought up was the fact that she was shirtless. Like she was topless, and they indicate to what I got. We'll just keep going because I'm in classic Tori form. I'm trying to get ahead of myself. So after receiving the autopsy report, though, police quickly changed Sandy's manner of death from accidental to homicide. They then immediately started to look at John as their number one suspect, right? Like the husband did it. Because John was a police officer, Special Prosecutor Joe Paulus was called in, and he was known as Hollywood Joe in the media because he loved himself a high-profile case, and he never lost.
Shouldn't that be a red flag as a prosecutor if you never lose? Because you're going to lose cases sometimes. That's just going to happen.
Well, yeah, you should lose cases sometimes.
You should lose cases sometimes, right? Yeah. So if you never, ever, ever lose, and you are very obviously attracted to the limelight, I don't know. Should we never be losing cases?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that would be like, oh, this college student has never failed a test. Or never even missed a question on a test. Like, okay, well, then maybe they're cheating. Like, what? I don't know. I just...
Yeah, you're right.
Like, so once humans make mistakes. I don't know.
Well, except for Paulus. Once Paulus took over the investigation, the state fire investigator Greg Egham and his team were asked to take a closer look at the crime scene. Egham said that it was an odd crime scene, and the doors to the house were shut and locked. There was no oxygen to feed the fire that was contained to the couch. And he said that the windows were all closed, and if the glass had shattered on any of them, the entire house would have gone up in flames. But because no oxygen was present to fuel that fire, it stayed just contained to the couch.
And also, okay, so what are we thinking here? Obviously, they now think that John Maloney killed Sandy.
Right.
And that he started a fire to conceal the murder, right? They just want to make it look like a tragic accident. And then they list all of these things that are going to be like, we'll see, because I found this and I found that and I found this. Yet none of those things contributed to the fire.
Right.
None of them contributed to the fire. And then...
But the thing is, they act like they're like, God, you know, he's an arson investigator, so he's really, he would be great at making this look like an accident. Or it was an accident.
Right. Like, is it possibly a coincidence that he got arson training and then his soon-to-be ex-wife dies in a fire? Yes. Should we take a closer look at that? Yes.
Because if he was so good at making it look like an accident,
then the whole house would have gone down.
Yeah, wouldn't he have been better at it?
I would think. Because he, of all people who would know, you know, I'm stupid. I don't know much about fires. So, like, if I was like, I'm going to set this fire to cover all this shit up, I would not think to open the windows. I would not think to do that.
I wouldn't think to do that either, but I do know from, like, candles that if you got a candle burning and you put the cover on it, it's going to go out.
Yeah, you suffocate it out, basically. Yeah. But would I think about that in the moment? No. An arson investigator, though, would know that this fire is going to burn out.
Totally.
If I only light it in one very particular area. This one little thing has been lit. I've lit nothing else around the whole house to ensure that the whole house goes down.
See, that's another big point. And again, like, I feel like we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but it's hard not to because... Oh, let's keep going. See, now I'm... Okay.
I shouldn't have rushed it. We can wait.
So when Egham was searching the couch, he found a number of matchbooks stuck inside pillows and a hat with a full book of matches inside. He also found 2 unburnt tissues twisted up and stuck in the couch cushions, which we mentioned. She was known to do that. He also found a pattern burnt into the rug that went from the coffee table to the couch, which he believed suggested that an accelerant was used.
And their whole big deal with, see, look at all these matchbooks all over in the couch. They weren't lit. They were just simply not lit. All those tissues that they said were twisted and looked like wicks, like something somebody would have all liked. This one, all like this. It wasn't lit.
No, the fire is just right the F over here, and all of these other things are inside of the couch. Wouldn't you think if you put them there to make the fire bigger, you would be like, I like this one, 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 I like...
Right. It like, what is that one show, Little Fires Everywhere or whatever?
Oh, yeah, I've heard about that show.
It's really good, but...
Well, in the book, I've not read it, but there is a book.
I didn't know that. Okay, well, I want to read that. But that's kind of what they're like, see all these things that are evidence that somebody would have used to make the fire cover up this crime.
Right.
Except they didn't use any of them. Oh, and except that Sandy had a history of every single one of those things, doing it herself and then falling down and passing out. Like,
yeah.
It just, I don't understand.
Next, his team searched the basement, and what they found down there was shocking. They found blood everywhere, including footprints in blood, and they sprayed luminol, and the basement lit up like, they say, a Christmas tree. There was blood in the shower, and a bloody shirt was found in the hamper. Testing was done, and it was all found to have been Sandy's blood. When they went back upstairs to continue the investigation, they found that the phone was off the hook. They retrieved Sandy's phone records because of this and found that Sandy had been on the phone with her mom until 6:15 the night before, right? Lola called her. Then at 6:40, all incoming calls got a busy signal, which is when they believed that the phone was taken off the hook. Then around 7:30, the phone started working again, and the crime scene investigation unit came in and determined that a small mechanism in the phone melted just enough to make the connection good again.
Wow.
I didn't know that was possible.
I didn't either.
Because of these findings, they were able to determine that the fire had to have been burning before 7:30 p.m. and Sandy must have died between 6:30 and 7:30 that evening.
Okay, so now let's find out
why John did it.
Yeah, exactly. Is John available during 6:30 to 7:30? Is he accounted for? Well,
yes and no.
He is. So they talked to him again. He's got an alibi. He says he was at home with Tracy and two of his sons, Aaron and Sean. So Matt, the oldest, was at baseball practice during this time, and he had to leave at 8 o'clock that night to go pick up Matt from baseball practice. Now, he does do this. He makes it to pick up Matt from baseball practice. He's not late. You know, no coaches, no other parents say I hung around with Matt until his dad got there. He picked him up on time.
Mm-hmm.
So Aaron told police and maintains that during this time period that he and his dad were setting up his new bunk bed. So he'd gotten a new bunk bed for his room. They're putting it together. And he's like, I was 8 years old at the time. I couldn't put that bunk bed together by myself.
And you wouldn't forget a big event like that. Like, if it was a run-of-the-mill every day, like, well, I mean, I think I was watching TV. Like, you could have mixed that up, but, like,
yeah,
it's a big enough event that you would remember.
Exactly. And it's not like they found out their mom had died 6 months later and were like, what were you doing that night? They're going to find out the next day.
Yeah.
So what they did the night before is imprinted in their brains. I was putting together a bunk bed and my mom was maybe burning to death. I mean, it's terrible, you know, but they're going to remember that.
Yeah.
Sean told police that he was watching TV in the living room while Aaron and John were putting the bunk bed together, and that from where he was sitting, he could see the front and back doors. And so he's like, nobody left. Nobody came in during that time. I would have seen somebody come and go, right?
Mm-hmm.
The police did question the boys, but neither one of them could remember specific timelines. I mean, they're 8 and 10. They're not even looking at the clock. Like, they're just like, I know that I was doing this. But so, of course, the police were just like, well, you could be wrong. You could be just saying, you know, whatever.
Yeah. Can't really trust that.
Yeah, exactly. So there's kind of a little bit of a standstill in the investigation at this point because they have the stuff from the arson team that they believe shows that it was deliberately set and all these things. But they can't find a shred of DNA evidence or anything that actually puts John at the scene. There's nothing. There are no fingerprints. There is no hair. There's no nothing. So the prosecutor decides, I'm going to have to get information elsewhere. I'm going to have to bring somebody else in. I need to have somebody give me information. And so he decides to reach out to John's girlfriend, Tracy. So they start looking into Tracy. And remember, she works for the IRS and she's young. She's 28. So this is a big damn deal for her. She's like really, really proud of this job. And they find out that she had lied about something on her IRS application. I don't know what it was. And so they use that against her. How is this allowed?
I have no idea.
Because when you have somebody who you want to get information from and you lead with, I know that you lied on this application, and I'll make sure nothing happens with that if you give me the information I want, then we're going to get whatever information you want, aren't we?
Yeah. I mean, you're threatening someone with losing their job.
Right.
You're obviously going to get what you want to hear, whether it's the truth or not.
Exactly. And initially, Tracy did not budge. Like, well, initially, she was like, no.
We've seen this before, though, in the Innocence files with girlfriends or partners of the suspect. And they're like, well, I mean, we could take away your kids.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Is that what you want?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I need you to tell me that he left the house before 8 o'clock that night. And if you don't, we're going to turn you in for this IRS thing. Or we won't turn you in for the IRS thing. And in fact, we'll give you immunity for that. Mm-hmm. We'll ensure that you can never be prosecuted for that. We just need to hear the truth, Tracy. I need you to tell me the truth. You need to finally tell me the truth, which is that he left before 8 o'clock that night. And so initially she's like, no. He did not leave before 8 o'clock. He did not leave before 8 o'clock. But then a month later, she gets her immunity. And guess what? Her story is completely different now. Mm-hmm. Now she says, like before she said she'd taken one nap, which was after John had gone to pick up Matt. So he would have already left the house. This was 8 o'clock or later. And now she lays down to take a nap. It's a very late nap.
That's going to bed.
I know, right? But apparently then, like initially she had said after he got home with Matt, they got up and like went shopping or something. I'm like, where are you going shopping? Like, anyway, they had a late night. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't, yeah.
Not for me,
Taking
man.
a nap at 8 o'clock is, I have now gone to bed. Thank you.
Yeah.
But now she says that she has this immunity. Now everything is completely different. She took 2 naps that day. She took one at 7.
And then one at 8?
And then one at 8? Right. So Sandy only lived 5 minutes from John. So now if she falls asleep at 7, and fuck what the kids say, they're little kids so they don't know what they're talking about, because all of the kids are like, he showed up on time to pick me up from baseball. He was putting the bunk beds together with me. I was watching TV and saw the door. Nobody could have come in and out. Whatever, any of that. Tracy initially says that she was up and around with them or whatever. And now that she gets immunity, she says, I took a nap at 7. And now everything the kids said that lined up with her first statement,
yeah,
where everything was lining up properly, now doesn't line up. And they're like, whatever. So she says she goes to sleep at 7. They say, that's plenty of time. He left. He went to Sandy's house. It's only 5 minutes away. That's plenty of time. And he could go to her house. He could kill her. He could be back by 7:45. When Tracy wakes up from her first nap, they go outside and smoke. And then supposedly she comes back in and fucking falls asleep again?
15 minutes late? Like, I don't...
If I'm like sick as hell, sure. I might wake up, go to the bathroom, eat something, and then go lay back down or something. But like, I don't know. Anyway... So she says they went outside and smoked, and then, yeah, she goes and takes her other nap or whatever. So now that they've got this opportunity for John, because before he did not have the opportunity.
Right.
Now they've got the opportunity. They want her to wear a wire and get a confession out of John. And she agrees because she wants that immunity.
Yeah.
So shortly after this, Tracy ends up telling John that she needs to move out. So they don't get the wire confession right away. She then is like, okay, I'm going to do it. But then she takes a leave of absence from her job and she moves to Vegas. And in Vegas, she's working at she's like waiting right? tables and stuff, I think. Yeah, she works at the casino. Obviously, she's having some reservations. I mean, she fought so hard to keep this job and now she's just gone. How does none of this make a difference? I don't know. So they decide to do the wire operation in Vegas. So Tracy calls John and says, hey, why don't you come visit me in Vegas? I miss you. Let's talk it out. Let's get back together. Like all of these things. So they're at the Lady Luck Hotel. They're set up in room 831. DA Paulus's team is in the room next door. They've got everything ready to go. So Tracy gets John in the room and then she takes an interesting approach. She's like, I know you killed Sandy. How did you do it? When did you do it? Why did you do it? And he's like, okay, what is happening here? The conversation ends up getting really heated. They're fighting. He's getting very frustrated. All of these things. And she would kind of change the subject, back off a little bit. And then once everything calmed down, she'd be like, I know you did it. Just tell me you did it. Like, I just need to know that you did it. Like, just tell me, be honest with me. Like, I don't know. I don't know exactly what she was saying, but
right.
That. And at times, John would be screaming. He'd be running around the room. He's like pulling his hair out. He's like super frustrated. He threatened to jump out of the window and kill himself at one point. But he maintained through all of these conversations that he did not kill Sandy. He maintained that he had nothing to do with it. So the next day, Tracy has to go to work. She works at the casino. While she's gone, And they've got the room like wired up, so they can see that he's searching the room for a wire and a camera or whatever, but he didn't find it. He just never found that it was in the clock radio. He missed it. So she's coming back up to the room after her shift, and she stops by Paulus's room and is like, what am I doing wrong here? Like, I need some advice. Like, I don't know what to do because he's not saying anything. And they're like, why don't you like take it down a notch? Like, maybe don't go in there and be like, tell me how you killed her. Like, maybe just like ask some questions and be a little less direct. So she goes back to the room. She keeps talking to John about the same thing, which honestly, I am surprised that as a police officer and he knew he was under suspicion, why he didn't put together that she must be working with them to be only wanting to bring this up.
Well, and he got so close because he has enough suspicion to look for the camera. Maybe after he didn't find it when it was there, but after he didn't find it, maybe he was like, man, this is all in my head. But
Yeah. And I mean, he loved her. He trusted her. That goes a long way. But they're talking again. She's being less direct this time. And she gets him to admit that he had gone to Sandy's house, that he was there the night that she died. Now, we know that he would have been there earlier in the day because he says that he went to go impress upon her how important it was that she go to this trial or whatever, or the divorce hearing. But now he says he was there that night as well. He saw that she was injured, but he left. He didn't do anything about it. And so Tracy's like, well, why wouldn't you have called 911 if you knew that she was injured? And he's like, well, it would have looked suspicious because the call would have come from her house, whatever. And so Paulus is like, we got him. Like, that's the nail in the coffin that we needed. So they arrest him right there in Vegas that afternoon. And he's charged with murder, arson, and mutilating a corpse.
John's trial took place 6 months after he was arrested. That is a very fast
murder trial.
Joe Paulus's version of events at trial was that John was at home with Tracy and was stressed out about the following day's custody hearing. He told the jury that while Tracy napped, John slipped out into the night and made the 5-minute drive to Sandy's house to make sure that she was going to show up for the hearing, right? Sandy lets him in. And John made it clear to her how important it was that she was there. Very important. This is a big day. You can't blow it. We got to be there. But Sandy was drunk, and the two started fighting, and he snapped. Paulus told the jury that he believed that John hit Sandy, panicked, and then became extremely angry. He said that John took the phone off the hook, threw her bloody shirt in the downstairs hamper, and realized that he needed to cover up her death. So he starts the fire, he locked the side door, and then he goes back home. The footage from the Vegas trip was Paulus's whole case, the only thing that he had on John, and it aided in his theory that there were times when John was angry and volatile on tape.
Okay. Did he...
See how angry he gets when somebody berates you for 27 hours?
Exactly. There are multiple hours of footage from Vegas. And they present mere minutes of it in court.
See?
I mean, any of us can look one way or another if you base everything off of this snapshot in time. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, how many bad reviews do we have based on one sentence that we said in an episode and they don't finish it? Like,
yeah.
Like, come on. It's, I don't know. I'm fine with the jury watching the video, but they need to watch the whole thing. You need to see the whole thing, because what is not present that the jury is seeing is the hours and hours and hours and hundreds of times that he's like, I did not do that. What are you talking about? I didn't do that.
Right.
I didn't do that. I didn't do that. Like,
yeah.
very frustrating.
So all of the times that he said no, he didn't do it, that's lying. The one time that he says, oh my God, fine, I was there.
Fine, I was there. Can we end this conversation? Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's when he's actually telling the truth. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
For John's defense, his attorney, Gerald Boyle, conceded that from the beginning that this was a case of strangulation and arson, but that John didn't kill Sandy, Tracy did. I don't know why that was the approach.
Whoopsies. Yeah. What? And for the record, John did not agree with this approach.
Right.
He thought it was an accident. He always thought it was an accident. He did not think it was murder. But
I wonder, though, because the manner of death was ruled as a homicide, if that is not even... Yeah, it's like, well, we can't... They're not going to change it, so we can't be like, it was an accident. It was an accident. Like, if we're going with homicide, we got to pick someone else that did it.
Yeah. But, I mean, honestly... I mean, it was a terrible defense. I don't think you should have used that. But
no,
there's just as much evidence that Tracy killed her as John.
Yeah. Which is
neither of their DNA is at the scene.
Yeah.
You know, like, they're both accounted for by the children during this time, but that doesn't matter. So if we don't, why is Tracy telling the truth? Why is it that she took 2 naps? If she took a nap, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. No.
It just...
completely agree.
Same amount of evidence both ways.
Yeah, definitely.
Not a good track, though.
Tracy took the stand. She denied any involvement. The jury of 5 men and 7 women deliberated for 11 hours, and in the end, John Maloney was found guilty on all 3 charges: first-degree murder, arson, and mutilation of a corpse in February of 1999. He was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole in February of 2024.
And we're recording this, by the way, in January of 2024, so...
We'll see if he gets out, which is,
right.
I just am appalled. The math ain't math. What, 28 years? No.
25 years?
Yeah. By 2006, John had lost several appeals, 2 of which were reviewed by the Supreme Court. And in 2006, Ira Robbins, a consultant advocate, asked the High Court to order an inquiry into statements that were made by an arson investigator at John's trial that he claimed were false. However, John's case was listed among those that the Wisconsin Supreme Court wouldn't review.
And let's remind you, the appellate system, like the judges in these cases are often former prosecutors.
Yeah.
And in their mind and experience, their job is to uphold convictions. Not all of them. But if you come from the prosecution background, that's a W. And you don't want to change it to an L. Like,
no. What's that going to do? No.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to admit defeat. While John was fighting for his appeals, Joe Paulus was dealing with a lot of bullshit. In 2004, he was arrested and convicted for receiving $48,000 in bribes in exchange for reducing or dismissing 22 of his cases. Yeah.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
22 cases. He was like doing this like bribery scheme where you paid a certain amount of money to an attorney. He gets a cut of that. And then when he goes to recommend whatever sentence he thinks should be recommended, he will say, but it's the first time. I really don't think he's a danger. Or, let's go minimum. I think minimum here.
Right. He pleaded guilty for all crimes and served a federal sentence of 58 months.
58 months.
As well as a 2-year sentence in a prison camp. He was also required to pay back. He had to pay $48,050 in bribe money, as well as $3,087 in court assessments. His license to practice law in Wisconsin was also revoked. And as a note, we actually did talk about this in the Alex Schaefer case. This is mixtape 196. Because of his conviction, many people believe that something may have been done in Maloney's case as well. But
I'm sorry, but this business of finding that a prosecutor is
shadier than
corrupt in his job, and
that
we're
should
going
give you a new trial.
Exactly. We're going to let all of these other convictions stand when we know he was taking bribes, and we know for sure 22 cases.
Yeah.
All of those need to be reviewed. Just like Dwayne Deaver from The Staircase, when they found out that he actually had no fucking idea what he was talking about. You have to go back and review every single case that he testified in as an expert. You have to.
Guess what? I do understand that that's a lot of time and a lot of money, but how is that fair? Like, how is that justice?
Right. You know what would make you spend less time and money? In making it so that they have to do their job right, or they have consequences. If we believe that normal people, civilians, that the threat of jail is enough of a consequence, that the threat of a speeding ticket is enough of a consequence. Our whole system is based on punishment. Why do they not get any?
Mm-hmm.
You need to be afraid that if you do some shit like that, you're going to have to pay all the money back. Maybe, I mean, I'm sure he wouldn't have the money to do it, but still, maybe then you're responsible for the cost that is incurred by reviewing these cases. Like, and you go to jail. There should be jail time for that.
Well, he did go to jail for 20 minutes.
But exactly. And like, if you can go to jail for a false police report because it uses resources and it uses all these things and you need to have a consequence for that, then why are we giving these people a slap on the wrist?
Don't ask me.
Man, it's frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
Oops. All right. So, is John Maloney guilty? There are a lot of people who don't think so. This includes their John and Sandy's 3 sons, Matt, Sean, and Aaron. They all believe that their mother's death was an accident. And when asked about, well, he kind of confessed, right? He said he was there. What do you think about that? I mean, they said the same thing. He just wanted that conversation to be done. And he often did this, they said, with his mom, where they'd be in a fight. It would be going on and on and on and on. And then finally he'd say whatever he needed to say to get it over with, right?
Right.
Like, okay, fine.
Have you ever, I think there's got to be, everyone in the world has been in this situation before where it's like, oh my God, can we just be done with this?
Especially when you're talking to someone who it feels like you're talking to a brick wall at that point, because you know that no matter what you say and no matter what you do, you're not going to get through to them.
Right.
I do this with my kids all the time. They'll be like, Mom, what does this word mean? And I'm like, it means this. They're like, no, it doesn't. I'm like, yes, it does.
Okay,
no,
fine.
Yeah. And then finally I'm like, okay, it doesn't mean that. Okay, fine, whatever. Like, why did you ask me? But it's like that when you've got somebody, and especially when he's having these conversations or arguments with Sandy, she's not sober in any way, shape, or form. She's very, very not sober. That's not a time that you're going to have somebody be able to think about something logically or really reason and be like, okay, yeah, I see that from your perspective now, or, like whatever. It's just not going to go anywhere. So you finally just want to be like, okay, just whatever you say, like the boys believe that Sandy passed out, that she had a lit cigarette like she often did, and she passed out. And remember those tissues that they found being twisted in the couch, and they said these are wicks that whoever created the wicks just forgot to light. Like you said, her sons said she kept those twisted up in the couch all the time to get her eye boogies.
I understand. We all get them. That's fine. That just grosses me out. Like, that's...
Keeping them in the couch for that? That's not where I would keep them. Maybe your pocket. But anyway, that's what she did. So, another person that is convinced of John's innocence is Sheila Berry, the founder of Truth in Justice. And she's spent a lot of years and a lot of her own money looking into this case, and she found a lot of inconsistencies and firmly believes that Sandy's death was an accident and not a murder. So she found some pretty critical evidence that the jury never saw. Pull over. If you're driving, pull over. You're going to throw everything out the window. There's nothing you can do about it. It's just going to happen. Remember, there was blood found in the basement. But police also found 2 VCRs stacked on top of a coffee table, and then right above that, hanging from the ceiling, was a cord from a conduit pipe. And the autopsy report revealed that Sandy was highly intoxicated that night, remember? She had marks on her neck where they said she was probably strangled. So what Sheila believes, and what many people believe, is that Sandy had tried to hang herself with the electrical cord, but when she jumped off the stack of VCRs, she ended up falling and she hit her head on the coffee table. Then she tried to clean herself up in the basement shower, which would explain the blood found in the basement, and then that shirt in the hamper. After her attempt to clean up, she goes back upstairs where she lit a cigarette and then she passed out. And that's what caused the fire. Police also found, and this has nothing to do with the case, so don't worry about it. Police also found several suicide notes in the garbage can on the first floor. There were 5 notes in total that the police found, and one read, quote, "John, how could you throw everything away? Take care of the kids. I'm done fighting." These notes were labeled as, quote, "apparent suicide notes" on the evidence list, but were never shown to the jury at John's trial, nor the possibility that her death was quite possibly an attempted suicide. None of that was introduced. This is why my question is, did the defense have this information?
Well,
did
that's what I'm
John
wondering.
know about this information?
Right. Because one would think if he had known about it, or if his defense attorney had known about it, then there is the direction that you're going.
And that introduces reasonable doubt instead of being like, I don't know, Tracy did it.
Right.
Like, I just cannot imagine that a defense attorney who had this information would have gone with Tracy did it.
Well, it worked for the prosecution.
Exactly. If they didn't have it, then you've got a Brady violation right there.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean,
And
other
there's
lawyers,
a new trial.
And there's a new trial.
But,
like, possibly. Like, I'm sure, I know John has other lawyers now and stuff like that. I would assume that if this information wasn't shared, that they would have already filed something like that. It's possible that the defense attorney knew about it and said, I think I'm just going to go with the Tracy did it thing.
in all my years of lawyering, I don't understand.
Right. And his attorney said, because they were like, why would you go with that? And he's like, well, if I went in front of this jury and said this was an accidental death, now that would have been malpractice. That would have been insufficient counsel or whatever. Why am I forgetting the name of it?
I don't know.
When you're, what you can file if your attorney didn't do a good job representing you.
Right.
Wow. I know.
I literally cannot remember.
So then, remember, if she'd fallen and hit her head, why was there no blood found upstairs? They found all this blood all over the basement, on towels, on Sandy's shirt, but none of these items had John's DNA on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so Sheila worked with several experts while investigating this case, and they believe that Sandy ultimately died of alcohol poisoning. And so if you read Dr. Dibdin's report, he talks about the fact that this blood alcohol level that she had would not have been immediately fatal. But what could have happened is that it was very high. She passes out face down on the couch. Now she's not even getting appropriate oxygen anyway. But her respiratory rate and her heart rate have slowed because of the alcohol in her system. Mm-hmm. And so eventually she dies. That's why she has a little bit of soot in her airway, but she doesn't have a whole lot because eventually she just ceased to breathe and have a heartbeat. Mm-hmm. And he says also the carbon monoxide could have done that as well from the fire. But the thing is, while she's still living, essentially she's still processing, like she's still having a heartbeat and her respiratory is still going, mm-hmm. albeit very shallowly probably. Her body continues to process out some of the alcohol and some of the carbon dioxide. So that lowers the rate, or that lowers the amount that they find by the time that she's dead, but it still contributed to her death. Right. She was essentially in what he called it an irreversible, lethal, he called it some kind of a coma. And of course now I forget the name of the coma. But essentially, her body was just in this state where she was going to die if she didn't get help, and nobody knew that she was in that situation. John says, that he, again, never believed that it was murder by anybody. He always thought it was an accident. He really went round and round with his attorney about it, but his attorney went with what he wanted to go with, and he couldn't afford a new attorney at that point. I mean, he's in jail, The case has been reviewed by a state-appointed attorney, Stephen Meyer, and when he looked at it, he was like, again, this is an internal investigation, essentially, because the state of Wisconsin is who prosecuted him anyway, so now the state of Wisconsin is going to take a look and see if they did anything wrong, and the state of Wisconsin found that the state of Wisconsin did a great job. And like we said, at this point, he is still incarcerated. He's up for parole in February of this year. We will keep an eye on that and see what happens. I don't know that he'll get parole because as of right now, he maintains his innocence. And if you get up there and say, I didn't do this, they're going to say, you're not sorry enough.
Right. You have to show remorse and you have to admit guilt.
Yeah. There is a petition on change.org for this being a wrongful conviction. If you feel so moved, you can certainly sign it. If you think that he is guilty, then, of course you don't have to. So, but that's it, you guys.
I just do not understand how this happens. How people, and you know what? I bring her up all the time, even though I can't stand her. Casey Anthony. And she wasn't convicted.
No, she wasn't. And I know that the state doesn't have to prove motive, but the motive don't motive to me. Because John was already in a position to get what he wanted. Now, I know he was going to have to pay some alimony, at least for a certain period of time, which he did not want to do because Sandy wasn't working. But I don't know. He wanted her to be at that hearing so badly that he was like, Sandy, you got to be there. You got to be there. She'd been delaying these proceedings for quite some time because she did not want a divorce. And he was like, you've got to be there. You've got, let's please just get this done. Let's get this done. Let's get this done. Well, she didn't show up that day, so that's going to delay it even further.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you guys for watching and listening. And we will catch you on the next episode. Let us know what you think in the comments. Love you.
Bye.
Bye.